Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Now there's a bit of a delay in this one because of reasons, some technical difficulties. Anyway, so with it being the beginning of the month, this, like I said, this should have come soon. With this being the beginning of the month, we're doing Patreon requests, and this one comes from Mistress Vicious. And she's asked me to look once again at Freeze the Fall. Now I've looked at them once before, I think. I looked at a track called Daughters of Witches about 7 months ago now, I think it was. So, yeah, I have heard them before, and this time I've been asked to look at the song VHS. Old school video medium. Who remembers VHS tapes? Used to have loads of them. Anyway, I'm talking bollocks. So, yeah, Freeze the Fall. I don't actually remember Daughters of Witches very well. I'm assuming I enjoyed it. So yeah, I don't actually remember much about the band at all, if I'm honest, because I haven't actually looked at them since I looked at that last track. So this will be an education. I have lyrics here. It seems to be a relatively short song lyrically, and I mean the video itself is just under 4 minutes, I think, so it's a relatively short track. So anyway, I think what our best option to do is to just jump straight into this and see what we've got. But before we do that, if you could just take a moment to like and subscribe if you haven't already, it would really, really mean the world to me. You know, I've been doing this for about 7 years at this point, and not even 3% of people watching my videos are actually subscribed, which is a little bit disheartening because, you know, I like to think I do something a little bit different than most other reactors. You know, they'll listen to a piece of music and go, yes, I liked it, or no, I didn't like it, and that's about all you'll get. I like to talk about the song. I like to talk about the lyrics, the stories, the motives, the morals behind the story of the piece of music, and very few, if any, other reaction channel actually does that. You know, I want to react to the actual piece of music. So, you know, I like to think I do something different. I thought that might be something people might be interested in, because it certainly interests me. So, you know, if you could like and subscribe, you know, it doesn't cost you anything, it takes a fraction of a second, but it does make the biggest difference to me and the channel. But with that being said, let's just jump into this track and see what we've got. So this is VHS by Freeze the Fall. Let's have a look. Well, there we go. VHS by Freeze the Fall. And a great piece of music that was. You know, it was very heavy, very chunky, very chuggy music. And some very, let's say, interesting vocal choices there. Because they used some obvious modulation on the vocal performance. You know, there was definitely some effect on there. Because there was some very weird effect on the vocals in certain points. And, you know, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It was just interesting because it fit with the sort of mood of the piece of music, and it really worked. You know, people do use effects on vocal performances. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's so egregiously overused that it just is just awful. I mean, take artists like T-Pain, for example. Is it T-Pain? I mean, that guy's voice is so horrendously auto-tuned. He sounds like a speak and spell from the 1980s. You know, I don't know how many people are actually going to get that reference. I'm showing my age. But, you know, there was some modulation in the vocal performance there. But like I say, it was used sparingly. And in sort of key areas where it really worked. It added to a certain effect in the song. Now, I'm not entirely sure what this is about. It looks like a Red Room or a snuff video sort of situation, if you will. I mean, years and years and years ago, I looked at a band called 17 Dead, I think it was called, or is it 7 Dead, something like that. And they did a song called Red Room, which had a similar sort of vibe to it. You know, people being tortured and murdered whilst being video recorded, and, you know, with the name being VHS and the general aesthetic of the video, it kind of gave that away. You know, there was the 3 band members there being sort of tortured, mutilated, if you will, by a nurse that looked like something that had come straight out of Silent Hill. And you can't convince me otherwise. That was very heavily inspired by Silent Hill, very obviously. And like I said, I get the idea that it's a snuff film sort of situation. And judging by the apparatus that was being used to record the video, you know, there were several videos stacked on top of it, all had different names on. Like, there was one that said hypothermia and stuff like that. I'm gonna take a stab in the dark and suggest that maybe those are names of other tracks by the band. I don't know, I could be miles wrong, but it sort of hints towards the fact that this person makes a habit of recording people being tortured and or murdered on video. And the song opens with Act 1, Scene 1, tell me you're happy here, don't ask my name, crawl into the grave. So immediately, you know, Act 1, Scene 1, right, we're starting filming now, tell me you're happy here. You know, talking to the victim, sort of like, tell me that you're happy where you are, you know, tied up and bound, gagged or whatever. Don't ask my name, because I'm never going to tell you. You know, I'm the anonymous cameraman, as it were. Crawl into the grave. Then it goes into a pre-chorus. Mutilate your perception of you. Find the tapes and pray it isn't. Find the tapes and pray it isn't what? Now, these are lyrics from Genius Lyrics. So hold on, let me just have a quick look. No. The other sets that I found. Yep, find the tapes and pray it isn't. So, yeah, it seems to be an accurate set of lyrics. So it's like, mutilate your perception of you. So again, is that like sort of, I'm gonna torture you until I break you, possibly, sort of thing? I don't know. Anyway, goes into the chorus. So learn to love me, then you'll fly. Carve your name into headlines. A mask to hide your hollowed eyes, boxed away for you to find. Film her cries for life. So, learn to love me, then you'll fly. Are these people being held captive and tortured so that, you know, sort of like, if you say that you like me, care about me, love me, whatever, I'll stop doing this to you, and then maybe, you know, we'll have forged this sort of bond through your suffering. I don't know. Carve your name into headlines. Again, that sort of suggests like this person has been kidnapped, taken away, so their name is going to be all over the news. This person is missing, and when subsequently their body is found, it's going to make headlines again. Could be. A mask to hide your hollowed eyes. Now, is that... Because there's this thing with murderers and serial killers. Normally, if a killer covers up a victim's face, it's either a sign of remorse or them trying to detach themselves from that person. They don't want to see that person as human. So, you know, is that what it is? Trying to mask to hide your hollowed eyes? Are they like covering? Is this killer covering up their face to sort of detract from their guilt? Sort of like it's an anonymous, faceless person, or an anonymous, faceless entity, essentially. So, you know, killing it's not necessarily a bad thing. Whereas if he was looking them in the eyes as he killed them, you know, it becomes a lot more personal. And could that possibly be what that is? I don't know. Boxed away for you to find, film her cries for life. Again, that's a suggestion towards that snuff film sort of idea. I'll always be his, breathing pain to my lungs. Follow to the grave, anything for you. Don't be afraid of the camera lens. Bite back the fear tethered to the memory. So again, you know, don't be afraid of the camera lens. Bite back the fear tethered to the memory. So again, that again suggests, you know, this guy is filming these people and filming himself torturing these people, and it'd be like every time they see this camera come into the room, they're going to be scared. They're going to know what's coming next. So it's like, don't be afraid of the camera lens. Bite back the fear tethered to the memory of what happened last time you saw it. And the first part of the verse there, I'll always be his, breathing pain to my lungs, follow to the grave, anything for you. So is this possibly looked at from the perspective of maybe an accomplice to the main murderer, as it were? So this twisted person, possibly one of his former victims, that's like helping to torture these other people, and she's like telling them, look, if you don't think about it, don't let yourself be afraid, you know, you'll get through this, you'll be fine. Is that possibly what's going on here? I don't know. And then it goes back into that chorus. So learn to love me and then you'll fly. Carve your name into headlines. A mask to hide your hollowed eyes, boxed away for you to find. Film her cries for life. Oh, excuse me. Terrible insomnia at the moment, so, you know. Anyway, then it goes into a bridge. Break routine, feel something, crave your pain, heal my needs. I'm sorry, my beauty, break here with me. So, break routine, feel something. Is that the killer or possibly accomplice? They're doing something different from normal because, you know, feel something. You know, they've suddenly felt something, possibly shame, or not even that. Maybe they've felt an attachment to one of these people that they're torturing, and they're going, hold on, I'm going to change things up a bit because I feel a bit strange doing this. Crave your pain, heal my needs. Again, this is a sort of sign of a sadistic sort of person. You know, they want to see the suffering of others to make themselves feel better, because, you know, 9 times out of 10, the person committing these crimes is generally a disturbed individual who's possibly been hurt quite severely, whether mentally or physically, in the past. So they want to inflict that sort of pain on others to make themselves feel less bad, if that makes sense. I'm sorry, my beauty, break here with me. So there is a certain degree of remorse there, but maybe not to the degree of actual. And then it goes back into that chorus. So learn to love me, then you'll fly. Carve your name into headlines. And mask to hide your hollowed eyes, boxed away for you to find. Film her cries for life. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, this could very well be looking at things from the perspective of a snuff video. It could also, in a way, be looked at as a sort of strange look into fame as well, I suppose, because you're basically put on display for people to look at, and, you know, you're forced to do tour after tour after show, and it can get very draining, it can get exhausting, and by the end of it you can end up actually hating and resenting it. And you know, the whole thing of the camera being pointed at you, you know, now you're famous, you're under constant scrutiny by the popularity at large. So there could be that sort of angle to it as well, you know, because you know, your whole life is on display for the rest of the world. And, you know, with paparazzi and stuff like that, if they want to find something out about you, they'll dig and dig and dig until they find something. Or, as happens quite a lot, they'll just make some shit up, you know, and that could also be what they're talking about here. It's like, there's that line, you know, don't be afraid of the camera lens, bite back the fear to memory. So, the camera, you know, pointing at you constantly, and you're like, I'm constantly being watched. I want time to myself. You know, yes, I might be famous, but I don't want to be stared at 24 hours a day, or, you know, doing tours and live shows and stuff like that. It is a relentless slog. It's exhausting. And like I say, it can end up being quite torturous, and you can get rather fed up with it, you know, eventually. You know, when bands release albums, you know, they could be touring for most of the year and sometimes even longer, and by the time they reach the end of the tour, they are so burnt out and so knackered, so exhausted, you know, they just want to turn around and go, I don't want to do this shit anymore, I am so fucking tired. You know, I haven't seen my family for months on end, you know, so there could be that sort of aspect to it as well. So, yeah, I don't know. And, I mean, there's lines here like, you know, crave your pain to heal my needs. You know, again, that could be like the fans, you know, because some fans do become weirdly obsessed with, with idols, such as, whether it be actors or musicians. Some people become very, very strangely obsessed with them, you know, and that some people feel like they have a sort of relationship, as it were, with that person. And there's that line there, crave your pain to heal my needs. You know, again, that could be like, I want to see you live on stage, I want to see you perform, and whilst that might make you miserable, that makes me feel great, you know. So there is that aspect to it as well. I could be completely way off base, but you know, there you could read it in that aspect as well, you know, and with the whole VHS thing, constant scrutiny and that sort of thing, you know. So, but I like the piece of music. Like I said, it's really heavy, really chunky, and, you know, obviously they're quite young by the looks of things. Like I said, I have looked at them before, about 7 months ago, so, and I don't actually remember too much from last time I looked at them. But obviously from this example, I did enjoy the music, and you know, they're an interesting band. And like I said, there's some interesting vocal choices on the modulation, the sounds use, and it added some interesting quirks to the music. It was something different and something quite interesting, and I like that. So, yeah, that's a good piece of music. I like that. I really should look at this band some more. You know, because like I said, 7 month gap between looking at them, I completely forgot who they were. So, that's on me. But I don't want to look too much into them in case someone suggests something by them that I, you know, and if I've already heard it, then it's not much of a reaction, because I like to go into these things blind. I like to know as little as possible. You know, I'll do research on a band at the beginning, and that's just so I get an understanding for who the band are, but that doesn't necessarily tell me exactly what the music's going to be. You know, there have been times I've looked at a description of a band and then listen to the music, and it's been something completely different to what I've expected. So I like to go into these as blind as possible. You know, if I've already covered a piece of music, if I've already heard a piece of music, I will generally say, you know, I have heard this before, or what have you. You know, I try to go into as much of this as blind as possible. So, but hearing a band before and then going into them again and forgetting what they're like is rather bad on my part. So anyway, yeah. So, you know, I really should look at some more of their stuff. But that was a good piece of music. I very much enjoyed it. But I don't know what else I can say on that, so I'm going to leave that as it is. Now, if you enjoyed... Let's try that again. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like or a subscribe if you haven't already, because it would really, really help me out. You know, I've been doing this for about 7 years at this point, and not even 3% of people watching my videos are actually subscribed, which is a little bit disheartening, because, you know, I like to think I do something a bit different. You know, I like to talk about the song. I like to react to the song. I don't want to just listen to it and go, yeah, I like it, no I didn't, and that's about it, because that's what most other reactors do. You know, I like to actually talk about the song, you know, the lyrics, the meaning, the songs, the stories, the meanings, the morals, the themes. That's what I'm saying. I was just repeating myself then. You know, I like to investigate what the song itself is about, and which is something that I think is greatly overlooked. You know, I think there is many people who just listen to music and don't actually listen to the music. You know, they just have it on in the background and it's just there. I like to actually know what the story is behind the piece of music, and that's why I do what I do. That's why I look through the lyrics. That's why I read through the lyrics. You know, because there's also this common misconception about heavy metal music that it's all about murder, violence, and that sort of thing, and that's just simply not true. You know, in the near 900 songs I've looked at on this channel, most of them have talked about real world things, you know, whether it be mental health, depression, domestic violence, homeless veterans, you know, things like that. You know, we've covered a vast array of topics in what these songs talk about. Very few of them have just been straight out murder, violence and morbidity. And whilst there is some like that, you know, it's a a great misunderstanding that all heavy metal is like that, and it's simply not true. And that's why I do what I do, is to try and dismiss that myth, but also to try and understand the music better. And that's why I do what I do, and I thought other people might enjoy that sort of thing. You know, what do you think the song is about? You know, even with this one, VHS, what do you think the song is about? Is it about a snuff film like I initially thought? Is it about them talking about fame and being under constant scrutiny from the public at large? Is that what it's about? Does it mean something completely different to that? You know, I want to have that sort of conversation. I want to talk about the music. I want to talk about the songs, not just listen to it and go, yeah, it's good. You know, I want a deeper look into it. That's why I do what I do. So, you know, if you did enjoy it, please consider giving it a like or a subscribe. You know, it doesn't cost you anything. It takes a fraction of a second, but it does make the biggest difference to me and the channel. But anyway, that's about all I've got for you for this one. So, yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Bye-bye.